This is Health Yeah, your weekly update on what's going on in the health, wellness, and medical world with Monica Robbins.
For many, it's the best time of the year. The sun is shining, family heads out for vacation and outdoor gatherings. Well, we're talking about summer season. And as much as we may love it, it can also be a very dangerous time. Each year, the CDC says 4,000 people die from unintentional drownings in the United States, and those numbers are going up. Organizations across the country do what they can to keep kids safe.
We gradually get them in the water, get them comfortable, teach them how to float and put their head underwater.
It's also a very busy time for emergency rooms, what you need to know to protect yourself and your kids from summertime injuries. Plus, when seasons change, your mood may shift. How to make sure the summer months don't take a toll on your mental health.
Getting outside, enjoying the sunshine, getting physically active can all do a lot to address your mental health.
Your guide to a safe summer season straight ahead on Prescription for Life. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Monica Robbins. As the summer season arrives, it brings with it the allure of the outdoor activities. And while these warmer months are typically associated with enjoyment and leisure, they also pose an increased risk for accidents and injuries. However, it doesn't have to be this way. Today, our focus is on ensuring the safety of you and your family throughout the summer season. Our expert has firsthand experience with the hazards of summer, and she'll provide valuable advice on how to stay safe. But before we get to her, let's dive into one of the most beloved summer pastimes, swimming, be it at the local swimming pool or on the sandy shores of a beach. Our TV station in Atlanta has a story on what an organization there is doing to keep kids safe in and around water.
Goggles on, swimmers ready. 9-year-old Brittany remembers what it first felt like to test the water.
When I was first learning, I was scared. I'll run out, but when I'll come back in and I'll face my fear.
And Alex Wan, executive director of Horizons Atlanta, says that's part of the process.
Our rising first graders, nearly 2/3 of them, this is the first time they've been in a pool. So it is a big thing to overcome for them.
Recognizing that need, the Atlanta nonprofit not only focuses on math and literacy throughout the summer, but also swimming.
We gradually get them in the water, get them comfortable, teach them how to float and put their head underwater.
The hope is kids return to the tuition-free program year after year, building not only academic success, but life-saving skills and self-esteem.
The one that I'm so good at is freestyle.
And the confidence seen in 9-year-old Yusuf shows students go far.
That awareness of, I can do this.
I feel like I'm a superhero. It felt like I'm getting better and better.
And a few weeks later, we checked back in to see those swimming powers at work. Horizons 160 rising fourth graders gathered at Georgia Tech to highlight their progress.
So I think the biggest change that we see is just pride. You know, the fact that they recognize too the progress that they've made from that first day.
The swim meet, a Horizons milestone.
It was amazing because I did it so good, and I was brave enough. It's so cool that I get experiences and get a medal.
Now let's get to our expert who will help us have fun and stay safe. Joining me now is Dr. Purva Grover, who is the chair of Pediatric Emergency Medicine at Cleveland Clinic. Thank you so much for being here.
Delighted to be here. Thank you.
Okay, number one reasons kids go to the emergency department in the summer. What do you see from your perspective?
You know, apart from the usual viruses, etc., we see injuries, lots of injuries, accidents, and broken bones. That's probably the majority of things which we see, along with some, with some pool-related, water-related, unfortunate incidents as well, which I would love to share some more information about.
Please do.
So, in terms of what do we see in terms of pool safety and water safety, every summer, in spite of this being out and about for many years, we see drownings, we see near drownings, we see things which are preventable. And this is the tragic stuff, that these things are truly preventable. We have legislature around this. We really encourage parents to make sure the first and the foremost and the only thing if we need to do is watch the child. Make sure you have almost like a designated driver. I say have a designated watcher who is off distractions, not scrolling on media, not reading a book, not socializing, but really being able to watch your kid. The most instances we see of these unfortunate events are actually at smaller gatherings. It's really not a whole lot in public pools where there are truly lifeguards and other designated people watching the kids. It's when one assumes so-and-so is watching and so-and-so is watching, but nobody's really watching. So if there's one thing which I can share, which I cannot emphasize enough, is that when your child is in the pool, in the water body of any sort, no matter their skill and experience in terms of swimming, make sure you have a designated watch person for your child. Make sure that any pool or any water body the kids are going to in terms of, mommy and daddy kind of pool and or a public pool, they have a fence. There's no furniture around it, so the kids are not climbing and getting into it. And again, the one thing which I'll tell you, which has happened to us in the past, is we've had instances where a young toddler was not found in the house. You're looking for the house. If you have a pool, if you have a car, those are the two places you want to search for first, because those are the things which can lead to really bad stuff. So I cannot overemphasize the preventative part. But accidents can happen, right? Accidents can happen anytime. And if they do, we want to make sure that we have people around the children at that time, somebody who is equipped to do good CPR. CPR can save a life. A good CPR setting at the site of the drowning and or near drowning has a multi-fold survival chance versus the EMS coming in and et cetera, et cetera. The quicker we can get to this, the better we can get to this, the better chance the kids have in terms of water and pool safety.
Do you find that a lot of people might be afraid to do CPR on a child?
Absolutely, because it's unnerving, the pressure, the stress. But what I would say is that if this is your child, would you want somebody to take a second guess and start versus just not do anything at all? I think the choice becomes clearer when you put yourself in that perspective.
You talked about fractures. Kids break their bones all the time, but obviously summertime is more. What is the main cause of those broken bones?
So honestly, I think kids are having fun, and sometimes they forget when safety and fun can supersede each other. We see a lot of bike accidents, falling off the bike, doing silly stuff, again, always wearing a helmet. I think fractures, etc., are treatable, but it's the head injuries which are the really scary part. So from an emergency department perspective, I'm okay, quote unquote, if you have, your hand breaks, but it's much more eventful and tragic when you can have a head injury, which is again preventable. Again, in the summer months, there's a lot of indoor trampoline use, outdoor trampoline use. Trampolines are fun and an amazing way to burn energy, but they come fraught with lots of risks. So I urge parents and families that when your kids are in a trampoline area zone, playing outside, that you want to be careful. If your kids are biking, please make sure you're wearing a helmet. That is probably the most you can do to prevent. And also, I think the other thing with injuries and prevention is exhaustion. When kids are exhausted and they're still pushing themselves because they are kids, that's when accidents and injuries are prone to happen.
So I want to talk about trampolines for a second, because I know a lot of parents put the netting around the trampoline. Does that make a difference?
So it's some sort of a safety net. I'm afraid I don't think it's a very good, it's sort of a placebo in my opinion. I think it is definitely, it adds to the safety, but it does not take away from what can still be allowed. So if there are multiple kids in there, that's for me is a recipe for disaster, just disaster. Same thing when if you have one child in and the way they fall down, you really have to make sure that you are appropriately equipped when you are getting into a trampoline. I think overall just not a fan of trampolines. My friends will never have trampolines in their houses because I'm just so crazy about it. But I do think that things can be done safely.
So yeah, I like your point about multiple kids on the trampoline. Don't do it, one kid at a time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, skateboards, hoverboards. We see, skate parks coming up all the time. You know, I see kids no helmets, you know, on the scooters because, you know, we think of helmets with bikes, but not these other things. What do you want parents to know?
So I think you're so right. I think we have now over time associated bikes with a helmet for the most part, but we still seem to get away with it. And especially if you think about it, the age group of these kids on hoverboards and skateboards is that teen, tween, older kids, and they are more risk averse. And that's the bottom line of it. So I think explaining to them and doing the best we can to make sure, I don't think we are at a point yet we can mandate it quite some in terms of even entry to the skateboard park or the really fun stuff to do. I mean, it is wonderful to be outside. It is okay to fall. It's okay to have bruises and cuts, but I think that we can prevent things. We should be able to do that.
All right, heat. That's always a big issue in the summer. Talk to me about, you know, the difference between heat stroke, heat exhaustion, and what should parents be watching for?
So, you know, when we talk about terms of heat, I think the one most important thing to remember is it's not the extent of how hot it is the duration of time the kids might be exposed to and how humid or the other circumstances around it. So younger kids should really not be out in direct sunlight from anywhere between 12 noon to 4 p. That is when the sun is the strongest, if you may, using sunscreen appropriately, making sure that their kids are hydrated. Frequent hydration breaks from all the activities they are doing. I think it's so important. Water is the best hydration we can do. We have lots of fun, fancy drinks out there, you know, mineral quenchers, etc., etc. Good old water, using shade as appropriately as you need to. When we talk about summer and we talk about heat, I think it's very important to talk about that whole situation about a kid in the car. You know, can I just go get a loaf of bread really quick from the store and it's just 2 minutes versus kids who sometimes climb into cars because it's hide and seek time, etc. The temperature in the cars can rise exponentially very quickly. It's a closed compartment. So just be very, very mindful. Kids and pets, honestly, I think it's so important to take care of these vulnerable populations. When we talk about differences between exhaustion, illness, cramping, it's when you start having neurological changes, so fatigue, dizziness, nausea, vomiting. Those are signs that you might be very close to a heat exhaustion, which means that this is almost at this point a medical emergency and you need to seek medical care immediately. First and foremost, switch the child to an area of shade. Cool them down with a fan if you can. The clothes you wear, make sure they are, you know, try to keep them as cotton and breezy as possible. Water, again, I think is really, really important. You also want to make sure that you are getting the temperature down steadily. So at this point, I think if you've reached that point that the kid is now vomiting, throwing up, is dizzy, is maybe slurred speech, they really should be seen by a medical provider.
Is there any other, you know, the face gets red, the sweating, that sort of thing? Is there anything?
So those are like, so it's kind of subjective, and I hate putting it out there because sometimes parents or families hold on to like 2 or 3 very, very objective findings, and this is a spectrum of a disease. So I think it's important to keep an eye out. The same thing when I talk about temperature. You know, this is a temperature, but some kids are like bouncing off the walls at 104, and some kids are completely out at 100.2. So it's all, for me, it's about what the patient or what the child looks like and what are they really feeling. I think knowing your child, recognizing those symptoms is so important.
All right, allergies.
So
they come about every year, you know, and then, you know, we go into, you know, May and we have the grass allergies coming in and they're miserable. So, but when do we have to take them seriously?
So I think with allergies, if your child is known and or prone to have seasonal allergies, then talk to your physician to start taking prophylactic medicines almost like 4 to 6 weeks before the pollen really starts. I think when you have to really start worrying about them is when it starts involving the respiratory system, so that having difficulty breathing, they are wheezing, they have this thing called stridor. All of these things are symptoms of worsening respiratory disease. That said, kids are miserable. We actually see a very fair share of kids in the emergency department with really itchy eyes. They are so uncomfortable. They are itching because they have hives everywhere. So even though those are not quote unquote serious for the family, for the child. They are very uncomfortable. And so I applaud them for seeking care. The reasons when I would start being worried about, start giving breathing treatments or steroids, etc., is when it start involving the lungs and the heart. And sometimes the kids are not able to speak very well, they're coughing incessantly. Those are all reasons to take, to take precaution and make sure that you're removing the offending agent and getting the care you need.
And also if your child has asthma and seasonal allergies.
Good point. That is, again, one of those two things that if they cross over, then the kids can get sicker than they would if they were not exposed to those allergies. So again, I think most physicians are very careful, like primary care physicians are really careful, pulmonologists, but they really, give the parents and families all these tools and resources to take care of. But again, you moved, you forgot, the kids haven't had this for 2 years, things can come back. So seek care as soon as you can if you need to.
Okay, this one affects me personally because I've dealt with this and had anaphylaxis 3 times. Bee stings. I'm allergic to bees, and kids are out, they're playing in the grass, they're playing in the woods, they're throwing rocks at yellow jacket hornet nests. Please don't do that. But, talk to me about bee stings, and when does a parent need to take this seriously and realize that it could be an allergy?
So I think when you have a bee sting, if this is the first time you have a bee sting, the likelihood of you going into anaphylaxis on the lower side, it's as those levels build up, if you may. That said, when we talk about anaphylaxis and a serious allergic reaction, signs and symptoms, I usually tell families, if it is involving more than 2 parts of your body, which means you have hives, which is the skin, you having nausea, which is the gut, those are 2 symptoms. Those are reasons to get your EpiPen and or seek attention right away. Everything doesn't have to be very dramatic. Sometimes anaphylaxis is a silent symptom progressor, and you don't really recognize it till things can become really bad. And so anytime it involves more than 2 systems, which means the hives, the gut, the nausea, the vomiting, the shortness of breathing, the feeling funny in the area. With bee stings, it could be somewhat more localized. And again, these can get infected. That's the other big piece, is that the bee stings, if the child is not allergic to them specifically, they can still get infected. It's such a vascular area. It's ripe for infection. So if you get that, take the appropriate antihistamines as you need to, steroids if you need to, seek attention, and if it starts looking like it's getting infected it becomes red and hot and painful and you have fevers, those are signs of infection, and again, you need to take it to your medical provider.
And I want to throw this out there too. You mentioned EpiPen, and I've had to use mine, and I think it's really important for people to understand that only buys you time because they wear off. So when you do have to epi, get to the hospital?
So, there is some conflicting science to that now. There's more and more studies which are saying that the chances of you having a rebound with an EpiPen, after the release of epi, the chances are very low. So if you are able to connect with your medical provider, more and more pediatricians will start telling, and you'll start seeing this change, because it's relatively new, 2022 guidelines. Actually the chair of our allergy department just shared this with us about a month ago. So I'm learning this as well. But you might not necessarily have to go to the emergency departments, but making sure that you know the symptoms to recognize them in case they are to reoccur. The chances of reoccurrence, they say, is very, very low now with the kind of stuff we've been doing. But the jury is out there now. I think it's ambivalent for me to say this or that at this point.
Well, again, like you said, parents know their kids. So if you think there's an issue,
trust your gut.
Go.
Yes, every time.
Okay, so one more issue I want to talk to you about is, kids are out of school, they're out of routine, they're, playing and they're doing whatever they want. Mental health. Is it an issue that parents should be paying attention to in summer months when we expect kids to be a lot happier? And
I'm so glad you asked me that question. I think it's extremely important to remember that summer might be a time for fun, enjoyment, relaxation, a break from the routine for majority of kids. But some kids actually need that routine. They prefer to have that spectrum of organized activities, school, and taking them off it because of summer school being closed can really throw them into a wrench. Kids with ADHD and some other developmental disabilities, and kids who are suffering and or struggling with mental health, this can really be a tough time for them. So what can we do? I think part one is recognizing that summer is not always something kids are looking forward to. This very special spectrum of vulnerable patient population, they are abhorring summer. They are scared because they will lose hanging out with their friends in school. They'll lose all their routine. They don't know how to vent. They wouldn't know how to get their energy out. And so it's so important to have alternate, not just activities, but alternate outlets for them. And that is emotional outlets, mental health outlets, physical outlets. And it's really important to keep up with therapy and counseling if they were scheduled. I hear a lot of parents saying, oh, we took a break over the summer because, you know, so-and-so was not going to school, so we thought things were better, but now they are worse. It's like medication, right? The therapy is something which is so important. If the kids are going through that therapy sessions, please don't stop them in the summertime. They probably need it more than ever because their entire routine is disrupted. The same thing with kids with ADHD, etc. They have a certain routine and they thrive off that routine. Kids with autism, they need a specific routine. Again, every child is different, but summer is not an easy month for, or easy time for some of these kids. Thank you for recognizing that.
That's, as always, phenomenal insight. Thank you so much for being with us.
Always fun to be with here. Thank you.
Dr. Grover talked about kids and their mental health during the summer months. New Center Maine's Sam Rogers takes a closer look at how to make mental health a top priority on your summer checklist.
After long winter days, Mainers truly earned their summer. And living in a state nicknamed Vacation Land, options for outdoor fun may seem endless.
People are affected by the weather, both positive and negative.
Many of us may associate the negative effects with the snow and cold, but Christine Morris of NAMI, Maine says out of all people with seasonal affective disorder,
about 10% of those diagnoses actually are summer diagnoses.
Prioritizing mental health is a year-round task, and it may be especially tough for students after leaving the classroom.
You lose that schedule and that routine. Routines can actually be very helpful. They can make us feel safe and they can ground us.
And in the age of social media, a fear of missing out.
You see everybody's posts and you do realize what you missed out on, that you weren't invited, things like that.
And it really is important to focus on your own self, because we are all individuals.
Christy Worcester is the Chief Program Officer at the nonprofit Sweetser.
And we all have our own strengths and our own challenges, and we do move at our own pace.
Moving back to NAMI, Maine, Morris says it's also important to address our physical health.
Well, getting outside, enjoying the sunshine, getting physically active can all do a lot to address your mental health.
Or can you just get up and enjoy a little bit of sunshine? Or is there something that you can do and then celebrate that?
Celebrating the small steps can go a long way, but as Morris says, you want to take time to care for yourself and not to overdo your summer plans.
It's about finding balance.
Balancing fun with a priority on your mental health. If you need to talk about it,
talk to your friends. Use social media in that way to reach out to your friends.
And you can always reach out to trained professionals who are ready to help you. Sam Rogers, News Center, Maine.
If you need help during this time, call or text 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. That'll do it for this edition of Prescription for Life. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back here next week with another dose. And until then, I'm Monica Robbins, wishing you and yours good health.
Thank you so much for tuning into Health Yeah. Please find me on Twitter and Instagram at Monica Robbins. Like and follow my Facebook page, Monica Robbins WKYC. Find video podcasts at Monica Robbins' channel on YouTube. And please subscribe. Wishing you great health and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks for listening to Health Yeah with Monica Robbins from WKYC Studios. Subscribe now so you never miss an update. And find more on everything you heard here on WKYC.com and on the WKYC app.